Hey guys, I want to show you how we make our caramelized onion pizza. It's a super easy pizza to make. Let me show you. It's just three ingredients. It's our caramelized onions, it's Emmentaler cheese, and Parano cheese. And those three go on before the pizza's cooked. And then our fourth and final ingredient is thyme, fresh thyme leaves, and those go on when the pie gets out of the oven. Now, the only thing you have to know about this pie is that you're really trying to get the ingredients on unevenly. You're trying to dollop them on so that you make sure that there's a difference of flavor and textures in the mouth. We don't have a lot of surface area on these small pies to make that happen. So now one thing that we do have to worry about is we don't want the pie to burn. So I'm going to take my hands here and I'm going to run just a tiny layer of this onion mixture in the oil over the crust pretty much everywhere to make sure that it's not dried out. And where there is a little bit of a dry or an empty spot, of course, I'm going to cover that with cheese. Let's go ahead here. The first cheese is the Emmentaler cheese. Now, put down a few dollops, and then the last little piece you can sort of crumble onto the random little extra spots, just to make sure, in case you're worried a spot is too far from some cheese and might burn. This cheese is cut a little thicker. I'm going to save that last little piece here. Save that last little piece just to make up for those little burn areas, make sure I'm not getting any. Now this is the Parano cheese. This cheese is a little sharper, so bites with that are going to have a different flavor. You can see this is cut a little thicker. It's actually sort of cut at an angle so that some bites will have a little bit more than others, get a little more coverage. This last little piece I always save just to make up and make sure I'm not getting any little burn spots and I'm getting a decent coverage. Okay? And that's it. That's our pizza. So you can see there are some bites that have a thin layer of the caramelized onion and others that have a nice thick blob. Okay? That's it. That's our pie. Let's go ahead and get this right in the oven. And give it a little shake. And then give it that final little stretch. Okay. Now, go over here to our oven, and I'm going to grab my water bottle. Now, since we're not baking pie after pie, I'm going to give it a little spritz on the bottom. Now, obviously, if I had an oven maker, an oven person right now, I wouldn't have to do that. They'd be balancing out this pie, this oven rather. They'd be balancing out the oven by putting in pie after pie after pie. But I know that hasn't happened here, so I'm going to do it myself with some water. So let me shake this off. That pie right in the oven. Perfect. And now we're going to wait just a few minutes. Now, one other thing I did want to mention is I've discussed before that different pies should be baked at different temperatures or sort of like to be baked, prefer to be baked at different temps. This is one of those pies that would be better baked if there's a hot spot in the oven, not necessarily a hot spot in the floor that's going to burn the bottom, but overall, if this pie could cook a little faster, it would be better for that pie. You want this pie lighter, as opposed to, for example, the salumi pizzas, which we like cooked a little lower, slower, longer, so they get that sort of leathery texture that goes with those meats on the salumi, especially the Toscano. But this pie is different. This pie, we just want to have a light, airy feeling to it, so we'd like this at a hotter temp. Let's come back in a couple minutes when it's baked. One of the reasons we like the cheese a little thicker on that pie is because it does have a tendency, as you can see it did here, to separate out. So the thicker it is, the less likely it is to do what it's doing now, which is actually not so great. See that oil? That's the oil that came out of the cheese. Now, the real issue here, though, is that our oven was just a little bit too cool. And so that means the pie was in there a long time, and it had a little bit of extra time in there for the cheese to oil out. If the cheese is thicker, if the oven flash cooks it on the outside without really penetrating, without that heat penetrating to the interior of the cheese as much, then you would find that that cheese didn't oil out, and it might look a little better than this pie. But this is still perfectly servable. Perfectly servable. We'll probably show you a photo of another example of a pie that looks a little more perfect than this one. Now I'm going to grab the thyme, and right here on my cooling rack, I'm going to go ahead and spread out my thyme. I'm giving it a little pinch in my hands just to release that herby flavor. And that's it. I'm going to cut it up. I'm grabbing the right cutter, the right pizza wheel. And that's it. Let me taste, see how I did. you can see the bottom, how perfect the bottom came out on this. Every slice came out perfect on the bottom. Really good. Really tasty. And exactly the way I want it. Some bites just cheese, some cheese and onions, some just onions. Gives a great, interesting feel in the mouth. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Oh.